Here's some quick items, animated items I have brought it in to this VR template through Migrate from the another project. Just keep in mind that's the project name is called Twinmotion to Unreal 5. Then I basically select the animated component, right click, asset actions, and then I choose Migrate, right? So this is how you bring files across multiple projects. So what I bring here is a couple of animated characters, as well as this video file, as well as this animated shader. So this is all covered in that Twinmotion to Unreal 5 tutorial, so I do not repeat here. And here I just want to show you really quick. If I switch to first person uh, blueprint game mode, if I play, you can see the animated character here, also some video file being displayed as material, and this is animated material. Okay, so there are a couple of things being added in. The way you can optimize this content is very important because in that project we are doing the PCVR, display the content through the screen. But here I want to play this in Oculus Quest 2, right? So you want to make sure everything is optimized. What I did here is for the capture, the original texture are pretty high. It's like a 4,000 pixel by 4,000. So what I did here is adding this LOD BIOS level of detail. So if you give this value 2, it will reduce this twice. So it's cut down half and half 2 times. Then the actual resolution will be 1024. So this is one way you can cut down some super high resolution image just by giving the LOD bias. Another thing I did is for this skeletal mesh, this boy, if I double click, this is from Mixamo. It doesn't have LOD. So here what I did is I increase LOD from 1 to 3, then I click regenerate. Once you do that, Unreal will automatically recompute the geometry. So if the original one is 31K as triangles, so now after you generate 3, regenerate 3, you should be able to see in LOD display I have the 3 options. Now if I switch LOD 1, LOD 2, you can see the polygon will be reduced, right? So this is a super useful technique. Later I'm gonna give you a link. You can find my earlier tutorial on LOD. Depends on how far away this capture from the camera, Unreal will kick in the different LOD file. So if you have a crowd, hundreds of people, but they are super far away from you, then the engine will choose a lower level of detail. But it's getting really close to you, then you have this higher level of detail. So it's a pretty smart program. I highly recommend for any complicated geometry, go ahead, generate LOD. I think 3, 4 should be fine. Okay, so this is LOD. For the video file though, I just want to show you this is a plan. I have this video material. Just make sure the video material, besides the shaders, migrate from another project. You also want to make sure you copy over the MP4 file here as well. So I have this MP4, 10 megabits directly in the movies folder. It has to be movies. And also make sure you update the file path to match to it. Then in the level blueprint, make sure you have the script. This is again covered in another tutorial. You open the media player to play this video. Otherwise, the video will be paused. It's not going to play. Another quick thing to just refresh is in the plugins. I have Electra. I have activated Electra player. That's the reason this codec is able to play MP4. So keep that in mind. All right, I think that's all I have done to bring the file, animated character, the video file. And for this one, the animated texture, this is one again covered in another tutorial. Just a simple pan, right? Panner, you pan the image. Um, yeah, nothing to talk about. The resolution of this one is relatively low, so it's a 1024 by 768. You should always keep this resolution as power of 2, so that will look good when you compile. Okay, do it in Photoshop, power of 2. I think that's it. This is how I set up this kind of decorative objects in the level. Plus, I have duplicated a few new objects. Um, the new shaders all come from the mobile starter content. So this is the kind of cheaper version you can use to apply to your geometry. So just keep in mind you do not want to make a super complicated shader. So any of this is relatively cheap. You can directly apply. Okay, so drag and drop. That's a quick way. Although they are very cheap, but you do not want to have too many different materials in the same scenario or in the same view, because whenever the uh, cameras be able to see all the objects, it's going to start to load these shaders. So it could accumulate and slow down your frame rate. So here I show frame rate. Right now I'm doing the 40, well, it's dropped pretty low to 59, right? Because I'm doing the recording at the same time, maybe that's hard. But you do want to be careful. If the frame rate is too low, you're going to see the lagging and other issues. All right. So reduce amount of reflective and transparent material. That would be nice. If you did a lot of update, maybe it's a good idea in your reflective sphere. You want to recompute reflection image, so that will be updated based on the new elements you put in. Okay. I think that is how I did this kind of decorative objects. Just keep in mind this boy uh, is a dynamic object, so it only casting the shadow from the sun. Okay, the sun is stationary, so it's kind of casting the shadows to dynamic objects. However, inside this room, the boy will not receive shadow from this light because this is static. It's not no effect for the dynamic objects. All right, I think that's it. Let's play and you can see the result. Okay, animated video, animated figure. If you go in, here's the boy. Here I can still click. All right. Yeah, in the next few video, I will talk more about blueprint, scripting to control the interaction between objects. All right. I forgot. There's one thing I should mention is in the packaging. If you do have a video material, just make sure in the packaging there is one option called movies to package. So here you can add a new array and then you can link a target to the MP4. So this will make sure the packaging will not ignore this video file. Okay, so it's just a minor thing. And then I will continue to bring more avatars, characters into the VR template. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about other characters and how we can possibly bring them into the VR. So the first one is about this robot. This robot is actually a super highly detailed um, character in Unreal Engine 5. However, I would not recommend to bring them into the VR template. The reason is if you really look into the material they have, double click, you can see the material is super complicated. It has a parent-children relationship. If you go to the parent, you can actually see the node. It's super complicated. I don't think this is easy to be transferred into the mobile VR material. So I would not recommend to bring this robot material into the VR template. However, there's a couple of other twin motion characters you might consider. So the first one is this three-dimension post people. If you really browse into asset, you can see it's right here. If I roll over, you can actually see this one has a pretty okay uh, materials as well as the level of detail. If you see the LOD is number 4, right? So it has, if I double click, it has multiple LOD. So this is good because in VR, when once you get really close to the character, it's automatically gonna using the highest detail. But if you far away from it, you will see the lower detailed. So this could be a good way to optimize this during the VR play. And also this is fully 3D. However, I would say the texture is a little bit expensive. If you really look into the resolution of the textures, here's a MI couple, and if you double click, you can see this one is a super high textures, 4096, 4096. So if you do want to migrate this or use it in VR, I would recommend to do the LOD at least to bias as 2, so it will decrease the resolution. Okay, so this is about this three-dimension post character. For the cutoff, so this is called if you go to browse, this is called cutout or the billboard type of character. This is really cheap. You can have as many as you want. It doesn't really hurt the performance because basically they are two-dimension billboard. Okay, it's not three-dimension. However, you do want to be careful. This material, if you really look into, it also has this kind of parent-children relationship, and this is the parent cutout. So if I double click, it does has this special attributes. This is called cutout. I think this is a material function, which automatically rotate the material always facing our camera. So when you migrate this into your VR template, just make sure everything needs to be migrated into. This is optional. I mean, if you do have the Twinmotion plugin, you don't really have to migrate because it will basically loading this through the plugin, which is 30G, really big. So in my opinion, I want to just migrate because I don't want you guys to download another 30G plugin. So what I do is I go right click, I will go ahead, go to export, you go to the actions, export, migrate. So you can see this is all associated component. You can go with it. Then I click OK. Then you can target to the destination you want to migrate to. When you do that, it does give you the warning. The reason is this one has a lot of reference. Some of the references directly into the plugin folder. It's not in the content browser folder. So it will ask you, do you want to actually reorganize, this is called consolidate, all the reference into a single folder. You should always click yes, so that will make your life a lot of easier. I click yes, then you can identify which folder you want to migrate to. So by default, I have a migrated folder. So I click OK, then everything will be reconnected and put into that single folder. Okay, so I'm not going to do this again because I already did already. Another thing you want to, same thing for the 3D post people. If you go here, right, it gives you exactly the same kind of question. Browse to asset. So here, if you migrate, and then just accept. You see all the dependencies, right? You have multiple textures. You have multiple material. You have children parent material. So it's pretty large. Click OK. Then you target to the content folder. Then you see the warning, do you want to consolidate? And then you yes, I want to consolidate into the migrated, this is the folder name. Okay, so I'm going to cancel it because I already did. Um, I will just close this project. I'll go back to my VR template project. So after the migrate, you can see everything will be pushed here. And what I did is I double click the texture, make sure you have OD as 2, so we'll reduce the resolution. Okay, and for this couple, make sure you have the LOD. So this has at least 3 LODs, so that's good. Okay, so what I did is I put this cutout characters right here. You see, this is actually 2D. If I move around, my camera is always facing me, and this is the 3D pose. So it's a 3D one, which has more accurate lighting. Okay, so this is really up to you how you want to use them. But I already did a packaging and test. It looks pretty okay. No problem to run this in Unreal in Quest 2. Okay, so now if I play, let me switch this to first person so you can see a little bit better. BP first person. Let's just make it smaller. Right, so here, if I change my position, you'll see the cutout people is always facing me. And if I go inside, right, I see the 3D people. You could notice if you got really close, it's using a higher detailed model, but if you got really far away, that model is actually lower LOD. Okay, I think that is all for everything I compiled here. Let me save everything. Clarify, this would be the same rule you can apply to other Twinmotion asset like furnitures, trees, but always be careful about LOD. Be careful about how much new content, how large they are, the resolution of the textures. So here I can give you a quick notes. Since we migrate this right into this location, so if you really check out the file size, you can see this new folder alone, including 55 new megabase content. So which is only like 2 avatars, 2 human characters. So you want to be careful. The biggest file is actually this couple, the post couple texture. They are super high resolution. So that's the reason it's taking a lot of space. However, because we're using an LOD bias, right, for the texture to cutting down them, so when you actually package, here I can show you the packaged file. The file is not as big as 55 megabase on top. So here, let's just show you the size of the build file. This is the new build file. You can see the APK file is 184, right? So this is the latest version with these 2 post avatar and cutout avatar. But before this, the earlier build is 178. So it's only add a little bit, a few megabits. But I think you can decide if this is worth or not. In my opinion, if you have a large crowd, you should do the cutout. But if you don't have like a one post character really close to the camera, then you can take the 3D one. And also, just to clarify, if you really look at the Migrate folder, it's not just about these shaders and the static mesh. You also have some new parent shader being transferred in. So one of these is called billboard. It's a material function, automatically make the billboard facing the camera. So this is actually pretty neat. You want to keep it. In the future, if you do migrate other new cutout materials into this folder, it maybe ask you to overwrite. In that case, you can just click yes. So you can actually adding more and more cutout into the same folder. So there could be multiple textures here, right? This is, they all share the same parent. They all share the same material function.